My name is Jeremy Doemel, and I am 48 years old, born in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, here in the United States. And ever since I was a child, I saw spirits known as disincarnates. I would see spirits in a death stage. Um, I was I would sleep outside my parents' bedroom door. They would say, "You're having nightmares, go back to bed." And I would be curled up like a dog outside their door, just terrified. Storms would increase energy. I would very fearful of storms. Um, I was I was like a dual diagnosis labeled. Saw a lot of psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors at a very young age, and was on a lot of medications. For those symptoms. I believe that any mind or mood altering substances is the quickest way to block those those attunements or feelings beyond the five senses. Even not that the five senses don't play into that, but feeling, sensing, knowing, and so I was also born with cerebral palsy and had been on opiates and medications from a young age. I had a long decades of addiction. Um, Subsequently, over 3 years now, totally sober. When I was in treatment, I realized that what really helped me to recover was to realize that it wasn't who I was, but what I was, and that's a multidimensional being. As soon as I stopped using medication or drugs and got sober, I was seeing disincarnates again, having incredible experiences again, and so I had to come to terms with that. I've done a lot of work, done a lot of research, become a practitioner of a lot of things today. I help in recovery community to understand multidimensionalism more, help others that are dual diagnosis, so on and so forth, to understand the clairs or clairsentient, clairaudient, claircognizant, the feeling, sensing, and knowing, and 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 again, still doing a mediumship work like that. I'm a shamanic healer today, a Reiki practitioner, shamanic healer, energy worker, help others to understand multidimensionalism.
Mm. Great. So it sounds like kind of understanding the non-physical nature of reality kind of really helped to push you through the times, the struggles you were facing as when you were younger.
100%, 100%.
So what kind of experiences did you have with the discarnates, as you call them? What sort of thing kind of started that off?
So when I was young, I would see like people in death stages, people with gross trauma to the body. I would see them as apparitions. I would feel, sense, and know them. Um, I could always sense spirits. We could get images of spirits, whether or not time periods. Um, could see through what's known as the Akashic record or the history of time. Uh, had a lot of experiences, especially in recovery. I would be going to meetings and being in churches, a lot of churches, and there's an incredible amount of spiritual activity within churches. Who to guess, right? I mean, it makes sense. But disincarnates are always around us. Non-physical beings, always around us. There's a number of reasons why they are still here or earthbound in a way, or in that lower astral realm. There's a number of reasons. And so since subsequently, I've had countless experiences where I've gone into a building or something or been called in to assist others. Saw the timeline, heard subsequent history of it, have it check out. It's a bit of an investigator, a peace builder, as you do inquiries and ask others for confirmations. Was this? Yes, this is historically accurate. This, so on and so forth, and then we do work to help spirits to transition into a higher vibrational state, and not be earthbound. So that's kind of what we do today.
So when you were having the experience with these apparitions, sorry, earlier in your life, what was it that kind of pivoted your thoughts over from this is probably just a figment of my imagination or a result of the drugs I'm on for cerebral palsy, to start believing that these were actual kind of real apparitions as such?
So the biggest thing I could say to others is to become, especially for any of those who are getting into starting to trust their inner knowingness, their guides. I always tell everybody that you don't need to know who your guides are, just know you're being guided. And and as you become your own case study, you do research whether or not you get a word or a name or something that ties into that, into research that, because there's a thing called known as etheric intelligence. It's like Jeremy didn't go to school, he's got a high school education, that's it. There's no way I could know some things, or words or history, and so those confirmations came through. And I love what you're saying, because I had a brother once say to me, he goes, Jeremy, like you say you talk to angels, gods, goddesses, deities, spiritual beings all the time, galactic ancestors, could be anything. And if you're saying that, wouldn't you think it's psychosis? If you're seeing a purple monkey, wouldn't you think that's psychosis? And I said, brother, the difference between you and me is if I perceive, feel, sense, or know a purple monkey, I'm going to ask it, what wisdom do you have for me? Or what is it? Why am I experiencing you? And there's always a reason. There's always a purpose, no matter how dark, no matter how fearful, because spiritual beings sometimes they still have, especially when it comes to disincarnates, have an emotional body, most of them, and we can get into that too. But yeah, so that's how we can determine, because we know facts that are beyond our own level of intelligence, right? So
do you have any specific examples of when that happened to you? What sort of information you got and was able to verify?
Absolutely. So I remember going to a wellness spa one day, and in this spa, we were going there for some healing workshop thing. And as I entered the building, I felt it to become very, very like something is. It starts with me like something's off, something doesn't feel natural, something feels a bit. There's a disturbance in the force. And as I walked upstairs, it got very, very heavy. And I would join the group, and sometimes I can get like, especially if spirit really wants to communicate with me, I will become physically uncomfortable until I can really look at it, So I removed myself from the group, and I started to open myself up to feel, sense, and know what's going on here. I felt there was a spirit that really didn't want to be seen, that was kind of hiding or was aggressive, so on and so forth. And I started to see visions of a man in the late 1800s, who had, and I started to get the timeline, and I'm seeing again through the Akash, and it was, and him and his wife, they had a livery, a boarding home, a horse stable, and a housing place, and so they had a daughter. Well, his wife had transitioned, passed on, not sure why, cholera, who knows, typhoid, who knows, whatever, she just died, transitioned. He was distraught and distressed and held with lots of heavy, dense energy. Well, so they had a daughter. The daughter was probably, I'm going to say roughly around 10 years of age, and he was caring for her. The man was going through a lot of grief, and his daughter died of another cause, and everybody in town thought that he had murdered her or killed her, or so on and so forth. Well, he ended up taking people that were transients and girls of that age, and for like 5 other girls of his daughter's age, he did end up murdering them, and kind of keeping and collecting them, and they were all bound to this land. And so we did some spiritual work. We were calling in some angelic beings. It was like I was watching down this hall, and this hall was so dark, like physically dark. Like, so if I'm seeing it through my third eye and my eyes, it's still very dark and oppressive. This man didn't want to be seen. I couldn't see his face. And so once we called in, we knew he was in very negative masculine energy, like very aggressive energy. So we called in some beings, yes, angels are very real, to help with the density of that. I remember working with Archangel Michael that day, and other ancestors that day, to soften and remove the density around his energy field as a spirit body, in order to where he could hear his wife, his loved ones, and the angels, and not be so earthbound. And I remember his daughter being there, and it still gets me goosebumps today and makes me emotional today when I heard her say, oh daddy," and it was incredibly emotional. A portal opened up, shoom shoom, they were gone. Four of the other souls, which were girls, they were like shum shum shum. They left, they went, they transitioned. One other stayed around who really loves the spa, and she was the and so the next day I had forgotten a crystal on the deck, right? Like a crystal, a little piece of amulet or something. So I had to go back. No coincidence, right? The next day I go back to get that crystal, and I ran into the owner, right? Who knows the history. And she's like, "What did you do?" She said, "The energy up here, even in the daytime, everything feels so beautiful. Who are you? What did you do?" And I've heard of you through other circles. And I told her what we had experienced the night before. And she said, "It feels beautiful up here." And she told me about what they call her Maddie. And Maddie is the spirit of the young girl that was murdered, but is very much okay and still earthbound. She can go back anytime she wants, but she loves it there. She moves things around the spa. She's playful. She absolutely loves it. And I told her, I said, this was an old livery. And everything I said, now it's a modern building. She said, "You're absolutely right. This was in the flats of an Appleton, Wisconsin, and in the old community, in the old days. This is exactly the historical district where the liveries and the stables and all these things were." And so we got that timeline. It blows our mind because you would think that, oh, God says that if you commit murder, you're going to hell. This is not true. If we feel, because we have an emotion, we are the God. We are the one that punishes ourselves truly in spirit form. Many may have a hard time understanding that, but that's just one example where that checked out. Many examples of that.
Mm-hmm. So how did this experience all take place? Was it in meditation, and what was kind of what did you do, and what did you feel, and did you see, and how did that work?
So I can feel it, and if I open myself up to feeling more of it or feeling into it, the biggest way for me is to separate my identity, because my identity creates resistance. And if there's resistance, that could be conjecture, conjured narrative, me thinking it's something or something. No. I separate my identity completely from that and just become open to light or information or vibrations that can build a storyline in my mental body to help me see, feel, sense, or know, um, um, and work with other aspects of intelligence that is beyond my own mind, right? So, and I just kind of get a feeling. Sometimes I can see spirits. In the years past, it's kind of transmuted into different energies. Sometimes I see them. It used to be like I would get visions of they're almost like Princess Leia and "Help us, Obi-Wan, you're the only hope." Like a
Hologram.
hologram. I used to see spirits. Yeah, I used to see spirits and period clothing or whatever, but they were kind of like a blue hue, and I could feel, sense, and know them. Other times they're full color spectrums. It can vary, but usually it starts with a feeling like, okay, something's here, something wants to be noticed, because spirits don't, contrary, I believe, my feeling is, some say don't give them fear because they feed off fear. No, they truly feed off love. They're trying to seek their way back to a higher attunement. And especially for those who can feel, sense, or know, most people shut it down. They become very scared. But really, we're all multidimensional beings. And if you can learn to not fear that and to love or have compassion to open up to that, most disincarnates just simply want to be seen. They just want to, they can you imagine? It's like being on an island where you don't speak the language and no one can hear you. And how frustrating could that be? So great compassion for disincarnates, spiritual beings.
Sure. Have you ever, I imagine you would have done throughout your life, but how much kind of a pushback have you had from those who don't believe that this sort of thing is real and that they believe it's all in your head or a result of drugs or whatever? Have you ever had that sort of pushback?
Of course, yeah. And I always say, we say this with love and compassion. Let them think they need to practice. And I don't allow others' fears to become my limits. Bashar says that one cannot resonate with what they are not a vibrational match to, and there's truth to that. Some people that are intrigued or believe are prepared and they're ready to understand more deeply. Others, it's very simple. It's like, what is your desire to? One best way to explain is, what is your desire? If I wanted to be a baker, and I want to, and I want to go into culinary arts, be a world class cupcake maker, cake maker, baker, how interested would mortuary science be to you? Mortuary science would probably be very disinteresting, would not resonate. And so thus, I also kind of view others, and whether or not they believe me, accept me or not, it doesn't concern. I always say that's nature's business who resonates with me. It's none of my business. And just love, compassion, no problem.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned about separating your identity. That is something that really I can't conceptualize because I've never actually been there, because the way I see it, we are bound to our personalities, to our bodies, and although of course we a lot of us know that our identity is a secondary thing, it's not who we are, it's kind of a play we're playing. How does one separate their identity in order to allow non-intrusion of our own thoughts and beliefs and storylines?
So I feel like the mind has to first make a connection, right? So if we can ask good questions, we can start to soften and open those neural pathways or energetic pathways to the possibility and the truth, and to create less resistance. So if I were to say to anybody that's listening to this, if you feel as though you are you, then where does you, or an aspect of you, your consciousness, go when you fall asleep at night and you remember nothing of the human experience? You have but yet your body's still there. But there's an aspect of you, an awareness of you, that whether or not you're aware or unaware of it in that moment, that's still existing. So that's the trick, is to tap into that aspect, the awareness beyond your own thought. And it sounds deep, but logically we can say to ourselves, you're absolutely right. And if you acknowledge that we are multidimensional, we all get goosebumps, we all get the heebie-jeebies, we can all feel, sense, and know things. We can be in a great mood, we're all empathic, and you can feel somebody and they might be smiling and yet they're hurting inside. We're all multi, and so it's a matter of kind of shutting down this conjecture of the mind and opening up to feeling, sensing, or knowing more of that.
Mm-hmm. So to play kind of devil's advocate to one degree, when we talk about the fact that we are still aware during sleep to some degree, but not aware of the human experience, what would you say to the argument then that say, well, I mean, there's nothing really spiritual about sleep. We understand it. We know that we're still alive at that time. We're still working and everything's fine. So, but then we know that consciousness can be taken away through things like general anesthesia and things like that. What would you say to that argument?
So, where do the random bits of information come randomly throughout your day? Like when you have those aha moments. Okay, let's say you were sleeping last night, you had anesthesia, whatever that was, and you were like totally lights out, and yet all of a sudden, boom, it clicks. Wow, where's that thought wave, that thought form coming from? I do remember my dream, just out of nowhere, and there's a connection there, and it's a random connection. Thus proves that there was some mental body activity or some mind activity happening and occurring there, even if you were unaware. I feel as though as human beings mostly discount that because we tell each other all the time that's not natural. That's not natural. And we literally like the body does what the mind tells it to, including the mind to the mind or the resistance. And we shut that down. We shut that communication down because most people believe that's not normal. That's that's not, we're 3D. I'm me, you're you, that's this, that's that. And it's all separation consciousness. But this is not truth of creation. And the more we soften that, and another thing I think that really helps with that is heart and mind cohesion, left and right hemisphere, heart, love, compassion, that opens up and expands and creates its own energy field around us that can tap into other informational sources, if you will.
So what is the kind of the makeup through your opinions and your experiences of the human being, I suppose? 'Cause you mentioned different bodies, whereas again, most today would say we are our brain and that's it.
Yeah.
You obviously see it very differently. So what do you see the human being?
So the simplest way to explain this, and there's many more components to it, but I'll say it this way: we'll say able to say it through the lens of 5 things. Okay, that we have an energy body, an etheric body, a mental body, an emotional body, and a physical body. Okay, so when a being being human, it's like the way I view it is there's a soul, and that's huge and vast and so diverse and multidimensional and just incredible, right? Part of the I am, part of creation as well. A fractal, but still part of the whole. And then there's the spirit, which comes with us, which is the light within the cells of our body. That's the spirit or the non-physical apparatus of us that sends the cells in our body into a state of vibration that makes us pick up and feel the goosebumps of others and so on. It's the spirit communicating with other beings, if you will, or something. We could look at it that way. So when we transition and take our last breath in physical, we lose the density, and as far as consciousness is concerned, physical manifestation is the heaviest, lowest vibrational dense state of consciousness. So we move up into other worlds. It's like Tolkien with Middle Earth, so on and so forth. And there's these different realms. So when the body takes its last breath, we lose our physical body and our mental body. Our brains and our bodies are left 21 grams. You may have heard of that. Like the body, when somebody dies, it's 21 grams of weight, of density, the density of the spirit, if you will, in the way we're looking at it. Leaves, but we still have an energy body, etheric body, and an emotional body. And just like the movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze, where he transitioned, he's like, oh no, like I don't want to go back. I love her. I want to stay. And he doesn't go to the portal. He doesn't move up, and he doesn't ascend into another higher vibrational state or go back to the resting place or heaven or the void, whatever you want to call it. And they stay earthbound in a kind of a lower astral realm, earthbound dimension of reality. Okay, so that's what kind of makes up the being human. If the simplest way is energy body, etheric body, mental body, emotional body, physical body. So
if we take the example of Ghost, where Patrick Swayze obviously says, I don't want to leave because I love her, etc. But then you mentioned that on death the mental body is lost. Is that, do you see what I mean? That seems to be quite, you wouldn't be able to kind of make that relationship without a mental body.
Right. So if we can look at our emotional body as well, great question. Our emotional body, some would say, oh, it's a result of the mental body, right? But no, it's literally a fluid energy source around us too, because again, we get caught up in the perception that everything is physical. It's not. It's a perception of being physical. It's really just an energy field that does what it does. Like our lungs expand and contract. It could experience fear or love, so on and so forth. And so our mental body, as much as we want to say it's the brain, and we could say in one hand it goes with physically. If we're discussing physical matter, we could say that's a brain, so on and so forth. But the mental body is no. So mental body, in a way, is like, if you think your brain now, your perceptions now, your mental body, which we're not looking at as a brain or physical, but as an energy source, it becomes much more or less physical and shifts its vibration to non-physical awareness. Because like, can you imagine seeing behind the veil? Can you imagine being not in physical and yet still being earthbound, or what you would perceive? So when your mental body change, yes, we could say, can we conceptualize what that would look like? Yeah, because now it's going to become more vast, more open, more knowing of the truth in the actuality, which is non-physical, but yet very real or perceived. So when we look at our physical...
I was just going to say, so in a way, it's not that the mental body is destroyed or lost with the physical brain. It's more that it separates and becomes a different form of that mental body.
Yes, it changes its vibration. So the density of the physical component that makes it's held in or perceived in falls away, right? Our vibration comes up. So we'll still have that. So we'll still have aspects of the mental body, but it's totally shifting its vibration. So it's the awareness. So we still have an emotional body. So Patrick Swayze's like, maybe if somebody thinks they've sinned or should be punished by God, I shouldn't go there. I can't go. It's a trick. I don't want to go to the light, right? My emotional body and the perception of the mental, it shifts its vibration. So um, it's like the eggshell and the egg and the yolk, and becoming aware of both aspects of it. How do we say this? So between the mental and the emotional body kind of converge through awareness, and it's a totally different perception of awareness. Um, but we have to. It's the challenge is to understand that, and I love this synchronicity, because as I look at your instruments and I see the banjo and I see the guitar, right, and in the background, I realize this is a podcast, but there's a banjo and a guitar in the background, and our reality, or what we conceptualize, is what is truth. And one thing is like all we know about a guitar, but when we take our last breath and we transition, everything changes, and yet there's a similarity. So now we're looking at the instrument of the banjo, and everything in the sound and everything and how it feels is very different, yet they're in very similar ways. Same structure, lower bout, instruments, a headstock, a neck, very similar. So I think we could equate that way. So thank you, Spirit, for pointing that out.
Yeah. I mentioned because there's so many different perceptions of what our experience is after death, and evidence for and against all of them. I mean, of course, you've got the basic one: once we die, that's it. You'll never know anything again for eternity because you're gone. The second one being heaven and hell, where you keep your identity, but depending on, and not really even depending on whether you're good or not, but whether you believe in God or not determines, which to me is blackmail, and I don't like that idea at all. But then on the more spiritual but not religious side of things, in terms of survival, it kind of splits into two camps, it seems, with nuances between each of them, but generally in two main things, which is you lose all your identity of who you are, what you were, and you become just one consciousness, aware of everything, but not being aware of you as you were. But then also the other side, which I think is more evidenced by evidential mediumship and near-death experiences and things like that, is that we do seem to retain our individuality and our memories and our aspirations and our desires and our loves after we leave the physical body, and then do with that what we will before moving on to another level. And it seems that there seems to be experiences to evidence both. So it's curious about what you think about those views. Of course, I'd imagine you're not in the view of once you die you're gone, nor heaven or hell.
Well, I love this. Great question. So for us to really truly understand this, I think we have to understand dimensions of reality, perceptions of reality, how the fractal or the light or the prism is broken into, why each dimension serves a purpose, and then there's densities of consciousness, which are awareness. But so in the first dimension, it's I am, right? I'm aware. Second dimension, duality, and that's really a lot of the religious view. Another goes with me and them. Third dimension, height, depth, width, past, present, future. Time becomes relevant in the third dimension, so on and so forth. Fifth dimension, unity. Fourth dimension, very different. Fifth, sixth, and seventh, angels and demons, all sorts of different things, right? So to really, and Matthias Stefano always explains the 9 dimensions so beautifully, so wonderfully. And I anyone can check out Matthias Stefano's take on dimensions. I think it's really resonates. But so duality, because of duality, right? The heaven, the hell. There has to be something beyond duality, and that's neutrality, right? So when we look at our passed on loved ones, or so many people I fear, I don't want to lose dad, I don't want to lose mom, I'm going to see my loved ones in heaven. You will, and I honor everybody's beliefs. I always say, no matter whether or not you choose to accept this or not, the truth will never change. There's soul familiarity. We realize that why are we called to certain places? Why do we resonate with different places or cultures on the earth plane? Or why is it that we feel we meet people and we've known them our entire life? Because maybe you have. Maybe you have in a different form, in a different life cycle, so on and so forth. So we look at our lives like from the history of consciousness. It's like, okay, so my now current family is very familiar, right? I know them. They're beautiful. I love them. And and yet they can change, right? So it's like, do you remember every single friend or the name of everybody you've ever known from first grade? From right. But at one point they were very important and beautiful and loving, and you knew them, right? And so it doesn't hurt the mind or the spirit to not necessarily think of them, but to now in your current stage of the continuum of your life cycle or your history of your soul, you're loving and experiencing what's in your orbit today, your family. And this may go on for 100 years, 200 years, and yet it always shifts. And you always, because what's the number one catalyst for evolution? Experience. So you're going to shift it's like, okay, yeah, I don't remember from first grade, but eighth grade was great. Then I forgot about eighth grade. And a lot of people that are clinging to fear or permanence, or thinking finite, or my family, I love my mom, I love my dad, I love my wife, I don't ever want to forget them. It's impossible, because the universal law won. So universal laws apply in this too. But it's just a variation of vibration. It's like you will always recognize a cloud. Clouds are very vast and different and always changing, though. But you will still always love and know what a cloud is. Same thing when it comes to our loved ones or soul familiarity. We'll never, it'll never be the same, but because we'll never be the same, and vice versa. But it'll always be familiar, if that makes sense.
I think, as somebody myself who is of more, I suppose, a scientific mindset, in the sense that I like to know things through, showing that they are unequivocally true. How do you think one can bring these understandings to the mainstream population? Because they are naturally of a very subjective nature, which is why for things like near-death experiences, where people go through the tunnel, see these deceased relatives, see archangels and whoever else. For me, that's great on an individual level, because to them there's no doubt that it was real. But my worry with that is there's no way of showing that actually happened. Although it more than likely did, there's no way we can actually verify it, which is why I like things like veridical perception and things like that you can actually show. And I think once that kind of experience, the more objective experience, is then brought to light more, these other subjective experiences, such as what you described, will become more just a following, logically following that, therefore these are more likely to also be true. So how do you think we should approach this kind of experience and this kind of philosophy without that verification kind of aspect to it?
So it's like, once you go deeper and you surrender and you're more open to concepts and experiences, or whether or not you're working with your own energy field, or you're coming online your chakras, you're expanding your pranayama, breath work, whatever that is, to become more multidimensional, or whether or not you're already naturally open, such as in the case of I was from birth, right? Just kind of an open state. You will definitely, there's no denying it. But that said, these are rose-colored glasses that you put on yourself. The individual has to put them on themselves. You can never take them off, and you can never allow anyone else to see through them, because you're part of the I am, and you're ascending, whether or not. And we never see anything from a surface level. The murderer has just as much value as the healer does. It's contrast, it's evolution, it's experience, it's reflection, it's beautiful. And yes, we play the villain, yes, we play the hero, yes, we play all these aspects in order to return back to the I am of awareness, as we again ascend. And I think when we talk about this, it's only going to resonate with who it's going to resonate, or somebody may have a traumatic experience or want to seek more or overcome the fear. and understand it more, right? But that fear is also part of evolution. So, or resistance is also part of evolution. So it's like saying, this is really beautiful. And what I say to others is, why wouldn't you want to know? Why wouldn't you just like take the pressure off? Yes, we understand karma or energy returns. We want to have beautiful human experience in this life cycle, and have a beautiful, loving, compassionate, high exuberance for life, the least amount of suffering as possible. But why wouldn't you want to look at it like, this is not a one and done. This is mysterious, and we can take the pressure off ourselves from thinking that we have to do everything now, or, oh my goodness, I'm gonna, no, it's not how it works. It never has. And if we could remember everything from every past life, it would be too much for the human avatar to hold in that capacity, because we just haven't evolved yet as beings being human, in the avatar, because this is a telephone. Our body is a telephone that communicates multidimensionally, and so as we navigate, as we remember or awaken or start to come online, it's like there's a vista, there's a mountain way off in the distance, and it's so beautiful. And you're seeing other people come back from the mountain, and they're saying, what a wonderful journey that was. The view up there is incredible, so beautiful. And it's up to the individual to choose whether or not they want to choose that path and walk to the top of that mountain and experience that for themselves. Some aren't ready. Some didn't come here to experience that. Some came here to experience division, separation, fear, the murderer, all sorts of things, right? And their evolution, which is infinite, of understanding and being. So it's a challenge.
So how would you recommend that somebody who has maybe only recently been introduced to the very basics of these philosophies, how would you recommend they get started from zero to start understanding these knowledges?
Meditation, grounding, working with the elements, understanding the elements. Meditation, grounding, breathing, allowing the body to do what the body's going to do. Surrender your identity, feel, tune in. Most people don't even feel their body. These are energy centers. These are portals. Each chakra is literally a portal, a communication, the way we see realities. So meditation, grounding, breath work, allow, and because you are the door, the lock, the key to the entire cosmos. We are creation itself, micro and macro. It is everything. It is within the light, within the cells. It is, as Ruiz says, it is not the star that creates the light, it is the light that creates the star. It's all everything is creation, frequency, creation, energy, frequency, and vibration, is consciousness, energy, frequency, vibration, creation, maintenance, and destruction. Those 7 things are what this entire universe and God and creation is about.
You mentioned meditation as kind of being the foundation, which I absolutely agree with. However, it seems that especially in our Western societies, it's been very commercialized to be meditation is kind of humming and listening to music and imagining things, which of course isn't actually what we're talking about. So how would one actually do a meditation to start off with?
I love what you're saying. Darren, brother. I really appreciate that, because a lot of people are coming online and they're like, I'm going to watch this breath work, or I'm really into this spiritual teacher doing this guided breath work, or all this. But that's not where the gold happens. You must make it your own or beyond yourself, allowing your higher self to guide you and to allow the magic to happen. Because there's an innateness inside the cell. You're talking DNA, genomes, you're talking all sorts of stuff and energy that will realign to help you to see more into worlds beyond this, which are not scary. They can be, and the only reason they are is because of the conditioned mind or the beliefs of others that have now become our own, whether or not that's religious view or fear-based energy or thought forms or thought waves. But the truth of it is to make it your own, to relax, to be you beyond you. And if you have to do that in privacy because you're concerned about, well, you cannot be concerned about what it looks like to others. Some of us will have kriyas, what are known as kriyas, spasms, muscle twitching, shaking of the body like a fish out of water. And all this is just moving energy, raising your frequency and vibration, opening you up more multidimensionally. And it's the yogis, the lamas, the Eastern wise ones, ancient civilizations knew this all along. There wasn't social media or people gossiping or worrying about the people talking as there was in the ancient times, and we had more of a freedom to do that and to come online or awaken in physical, as beings being human in the ancient times. But today you just have to be fearless, and it takes great courage to walk away from something good for something greater. So allow others to think, love yourself, and allow the magic to happen. But meditation, yeah.
What would you recommend as kind of a beginning meditation practice? As in, what would one do? Would one sit down and just watch the breath, or for how long? And what would it involve?
So I feel like, so our root chakra, what's known as our root chakra, it's at the base of our spine. There's a lot of blood flow down there. There's a lot of energy. If you take your mind, I would say start with that ground, as if even if you thought soil, I'm thinking soil, or I visualize roots growing from me down through the floor, gently allowed to pass through the floor into the soil, down to Mother Earth's sacred heart space. Just feel that, just ground yourself. And then start to soften and open. It's like bringing your awareness. Like if you were to take your brain or your conscious 360 degrees out of your head and bring your awareness down to the base of your spine and feel that. You may visualize and just feel into that energy center. Bring your awareness to the base of your spine. You will notice, a lot of people will notice that it's the light, the spirit again, within the cells of the body start to activate and awaken and open that and bring that online. And you'll feel heat in the base of your spine. And if you start to visualize whatever way works for you to open and clear that energy center of heaviness, some of us will visualize a disc and like literally like blowing a disc. It's a red, dark hued disc, and maybe you bringing the element of water into it, and as it spins, it's like watercolor, and it gets lighter red. Breathe, spin, keep your awareness in the root, and just and work your way through it. And then magical, mystical things can start to occur from there. I mean, once I did this, I was remote viewing, auto viewing, seeing things, seeing things in real time. I was doing all sorts of mystical experiences, and it came from working with my chakras. And I didn't even really know or read books about it. Again, I think that served me very well to not try to do it somebody else's way, but to visualize and feel it myself.
So following on from meditation as another key aspect, you mentioned grounding. Could you briefly describe what that is?
So if we look at our bodies like radio towers that communicate with super consciousness, supreme consciousness, everything else, every big radio tower is grounded, right? And Mother Earth has its own vibration, its own energy field and stability, which can empower too. That's why like tree nations or tree spirits are so important. They are literally the antenna to Mother Earth. They are deeply grounded in Mother Earth, and their canopy is in the ether, and they are literally antennas for cosmos, for Mother Earth. They're huge and extremely substantial. So grounding is very important. Again, it's the foundation. It is what anchors in our energy, and there's an energy grid in Mother Earth, a crystalline grid in Mother Earth. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to know what it is. Truly, all we need to do is have an attention, a feeling, and breathe and make that conscious connection to Mother Earth, which then opens up the foundation or the pranic tube to expand through the chakra system, up and out and beyond. And it's amazing. So it's critically important, especially if you're just coming online or seeking to become more multidimensional. We already are multidimensional. We just want to be consciously aware of it and trust in that.
Mm-hmm. So how would one actually practice grounding? Through visualization, as you say, or breathing?
Yeah. So I dig my toes into my shoes. Like right now I could dig my toes and I visualize like energy. You can literally feel your energy. So we have energy fields like and meridians, chakras, energy points. We are literally energy. The best way, I know this is a podcast, but if anyone were to take their fingernails together and rub them very quickly, rubbing their fingernails quickly together, both nail on each hand, and then shake their arms out and put them down to the sides of their body and feel the energy flowing through your fingers. That's your energy field. That's part of your energy field. You can literally feel it coming through your hands. So making that conscious connection that we are energy beings, and now taking your energy and visualizing, this is mentalism, but feeling like digging your toes into your shoes and feeling like your energy field expand down gently aloud, like roots or whatever that looks like, gently aloud through the floor. You can visualize the basement. Maybe I'm in a building with a basement. I'm down into the soil, the concrete structure, the soil, down to Mother Earth's heart space. I visualize my roots growing out to the nearest water source or fire spirit, whether or not that's magna or coming back out of the earth plane into lightning and the air spirit, and bringing the elements together and anchoring it, and then breathing and feel what that feels like to draw the earth energy up through your roots into the toes, into the palms of your feet, into your shins and your calves, left side, right side of your body, into your thighs, your quads, your root chakra, up, so on and so forth, and out, and feel that energy connection. Your body will feel electric. It may get warm. It may get cold. You may notice sensation. This is all very natural because you're activating, again, the spirit within yourself, the multidimensional aspect within yourself that is connected to all things. There's a portal, if you will, and it's agitating the cells of your body as they bring them into a higher vibrational state, and you can feel all sorts of stuff. You can get warm, cold, shake, quiver, all sorts of things. Beautiful. Very natural.
So the next thing you mentioned was understanding how the different elements work together. So could you just describe what the elements are and how they interact with us and how we can interact with them?
So for anybody that wants to end their suffering in a human experience, whether or not that's understanding why others do things or why we behave a certain way or why there are tendencies or patterns that are unhealthy or never broken, understanding and meditating on the elements the elements are us, we are them. And if you humbly ask them to help show you their wisdom, you will quickly start to see, you will see visions, you will slow it down, you will slow down the mind, you will have mind, body, spirit, coherence. It's like if I were to meditate on, and they're all so deeply connected, brother. If I were to meditate, I had a conversation with a gentleman the other day. I said, meditate on fire spirit, but have no opinion, no preconceived notion, no reservation or expectation what that looked like. You may build visions of a snail on a rock with a moist, slimy coat and all the elements may be there. So the snail is like literally on a rock, and that's earth, right? Obviously. And so it was the snail, earth, and yet you're focusing on fire spirit, but yet there's water from the slime, from the snail, there's air all around it, and yet the kinetic energy or the life force or prana moving through it, that fire element is propelling the energy to move that snail, and yet it can go so deep. And the reason I say it can help you bring peace and harmony to your thoughts or your perceptions is because in that vision, the snail is already home. No matter where it goes, it's home. It's beautiful. It's surrounded by the elements. How peaceful. Everything is provided for. You are safe. You are love. You are divine. You are the elements. Like in that vision, we can see how the elements are deeply always together, always near, always part of. And it helps us to see. So we're meditating with the elements activates something ancient within us, a peacefulness, a creative, primitive source of energy that is a manifestation in this reality. But building blocks.
Yeah. When you give the example there of visualizing fire, and say one has the vision of a snail, I'd imagine, looking at it from kind of how I would perceive it, I would be sitting there visualizing a snail and thinking, why am I visualizing a snail? I wouldn't be looking into the trail and everything else. I'd just be sitting there thinking, well, I've done this wrong. I'm just thinking about a snail. What relevance has that got? How does one kind of develop those muscles, I suppose, those spiritual muscles?
Great question. I'm glad you said that, because we call that being in the vortex, when you're like, whether or not you're conscious of it or not, this is important to talk about for the collective. So whenever you have question whenever the mind or your identity comes back and you're questioning, like, I don't understand, just by simply thinking the thought, we don't have to ever speak anything. A thought is a thought wave, and you're communicating with the higher realms or your higher self or your spiritual team. More clarity, more clarity. I've said it so many times, more clarity. And then sometimes the information can become so vast. We call them downloads or spiritual information, where you're just like, getting so much information. And I'm like, slow down, spirit, slow down, Jeremy, this aspect of me, the information holder, my mind, is taking on too much information. Sometimes I ask Mother Universe or my guardian angel or my spiritual team to create an energy memory for me to recall this when it is meant for me to recall. So even if I'm getting vast amounts of information during meditation, if I don't understand it, I always ask for more clarity, and then surrender again, set my identity aside, and just allow it to build. Because once you make that conscious connection of true flow state of etheric intelligence, it's like it goes back to the drug addict. Wow, that made me feel great. I don't have feelings and emotions. I can do anything. It's like you're gonna want more of it. It's like, and I say that with love. Grateful I've gotten through that, but that's kind of the feeling where it's like I'm everything. I'm perfect. Everything's great, and it's just such a surrendered flow state through consciousness that the identity quickly starts to understand that, recognize that flow state, and then it becomes easier. That's why we call it practitioners, not practiced. We're done, but sometimes we have to correct. Sometimes the mind comes back during meditation or when we're seeking spiritual information or meditation, and we have to just kind of clear, cancel, release, reflect, regroup, move forward, and set the identity aside. Ask good questions. Could I have more clarity, spirit? And then surrender again. And if the information is so vast, just ask for there to be an energy memory. Like, again, what we think is possible is such a limited belief. Like, it is literally, energy memories are real. All these things are real. It's like a pop-up window with information that you can recall when you're meant to. It's incredible. It's Merlin's beard.
Absolutely. Okay, yeah. So we've gone through meditation, grounding, and the elements. Was there another aspect that you mentioned that I've forgotten about?
So I don't know. I guess my guides are telling me the etheric aspect. So when we look at a 5-point star, we have earth, water, fire, air, spirit, right? Or ether, or the etheric. That higher self connection, the oversoul, some might say, or your spiritual team, or these are just perspectives, right? Sometimes we see them from we are the source, again, because we're talking dimensions. If it's like second dimension of me and them, duality or something. Sometimes we are the angels. Sometimes the angels are another perspective that speak to us. If you feel it, perceive an angel, but really, through the truth of oneness, it is still us, only a fractal of the I am. But so to work on literally saying, like, I'm not my mind, affirmations, I'm not my mind, I'm not my body, I am, right? I am source, I'm God, I'm creation. A lot of people with religious views will say, you can't say I'm God. Really? And the other thing is this: your mind is so beautiful and powerful. People say, you're not God. Can you produce a flower? I guess I'll leave this here, and I'm like, well, okay, you may not be able to manifest a flower into fruition in a physical form here and now, because it's a dense, heavy, slow-moving, manifesting reality we're living here in physical. But if I were to say to you, can you feel soil? Can you close your eyes and feel soil? Can you feel a seed? Can you feel water nourishing you? Can you feel your seed, your expansion? Can you feel yourself come out of the soil? Can you feel your body, yourself, your energy expand into a flower? Can you feel the rays of the sun on your petals? Can you become yes. Most of us that won't discount it and be a skeptic and say, wow, that's crap. No, they literally will feel as though they are the flower themselves. Thus, you are God. And if you think you're not God, then ask good questions. if you cut yourself on your hand and you say, as long as I keep that wound cleaned, it's going to heal. Well, there's an intelligence in that wound that knows how to repair the cells and everything else. What we say that's not God. It's just that you're not aware of how that's working. Going within yourself, becoming the creator being, and realizing through awareness that you are the healer, that you are the cells, that you are the intelligence, that you are God. And we say to ourselves because religious or something that's something beyond us. It is not. It has always been within us. And look at a wound if we want to see that intelligence.
Absolutely. One thing that I wanted to pick up on is you, at the very beginning of what you just said, you mentioned that your guides are telling you. So how does that come across? How, for example, can you tell the difference between a guide giving you a suggestion versus your own mind/memory?
So, okay. I don't know if you've picked up on this or not, but I'm being told this now. It's just a feeling, a thought. It's like not me. I'm like not trying to think during this interview. I'm not thinking. I'm just being, right. Okay. And I'm just allowing. And I've said we a lot. I don't know if anybody's picked up on that, but I've said we a lot. We. Okay. So I don't do that. Sometimes I say I, but sometimes I say we, and it's not that I'm doing it consciously. It's just more of a flow state of me and the beyond me, or intelligence beyond me, helping to guide us through this interview and say what needs to be said or flow or whatever that looks like, right? So it's just a subtle, it's like a pause. I can feel it within my body, within my mind. Stop, Jeremy, quote, Jeremy, stop, relax. Oh, okay, that's what we want. And then allow the thought to come to me, which will dictate where we're going or what we're trying to achieve here in this conversation, so on and so forth. So, and it happens. For anyone that has ever followed Abraham Hicks or other spiritual teachers, sometimes they literally talk in third person. People think they're crazy. They're not. It's literally a natural occurrence, and it drives my mother crazy when I say we're going to Green Bay for a football game, and she goes, "Oh, you and your angels, or you and people?" It drives her nuts. She's always looking for clarity, but that happens,
The concept of angels and things like that is very interesting to me, because for me, and maybe for most people, when you mention, or when someone mentions angels, they're thinking, winged feathers with halos sitting on a cloud pulling a harp or something like that. I suppose the question would be, what are angels in your perspective?
They're bringers of light. And if we look at light as information or energy, okay, whether or not that's healing or even agitation, or because destruction is a form of creation as well, right? So like we can suffer long enough and then choose to heal and experience the other side of that suffering but they are angelic beings. Again, remember a little bit ago we were talking about how sometimes it can be me, or I can be the angel, or the angel could be me, right? It depends on what is necessary for the mind of the identity of the individual that may need something that is going to resonate or integrate more clearly by it being another aspect beyond us, right? Sometimes it makes us feel wonder. Listen, when somebody has an initiation with Archangel Raphael and you're like, wow, it's like super loud, super bright, super amazing. And that actually happened to me in my life. An initiation, and that was meant for me to experience Raphael's energy, because it's really consciousness energy. It's not a thing. It's not. It's like angels would laugh at the fact that we even call them anything, because what they are is energy, source energy, information or energy. But we depict them in ways that help bring us comfort, or could even create fear in order to make movement, because destruction could be a form of creation again. So they could be anything. They could seraphim angels. They could have They could be just an energy signature, a frequency. It could be anything. Angelic beings are, because we get lost on the sight that it's just simply consciousness, energy, frequency, and vibration.
Yeah, because I can imagine that most people, when you talk of Archangel Michael and Archangel Gabriel and Raphael, would immediately see them as kind of authoritative figures, kind of one line down the hierarchy from God, and would see them as each individual entities, I suppose. What's your thought on that kind of opinion? I suppose would be the same as what you've just said.
Angelic, anything in creation is never one way. It's impossible. Nothing is just pure one way. It is all things at all times. It is what the aspect of that consciousness is, whether or not it's in a positive oriented or negative oriented, what we would call, because they could be anything, and they're beautiful. So even the angels can be upset, even or perceive. It's really us perceiving them as being upset, right? The best way to describe this about that their negativity or evil is not truly that. It's a perception. Is that if I had a spectrum, left to right, a line in front of me, and on that line there was 70, let's say, I'm not sure what Celsius is, but here in the States, we deal with Fahrenheit, 70 degrees temperature. It's kind of warm. And I put my hand under that water as a tap water, and I'm like, oh, that's warm. That's hot. Now that's a polarity, negative physical polarity of positive or negative, right? But I wouldn't say that's evil. But if I did say that was evil, that's too warm. And now I turn the water down to 32 degrees or 33 degrees Fahrenheit, which is cold. And I put that, oh, that's too cold. Again, I'm going to say that's a negative experience, but not evil. Now I crank the water back up. It's 80 degrees, which is warmer than the 70. I put it under, and I'm like, oh, that's just right. It's beautiful. So now 80 degrees is pleasurable, benevolent, even though 70 degrees, you see what I'm saying? It's a perception. Evil's a perception. It's relative, right? So, but anything could be anything at all times, and it just depends on where your perception is or what's needed for your growth. If you're seeking healing, angels can be anything, my brother. Same thing as any other thing.
I suppose a good subject to move on to now is kind of what the nature or what our experience in an afterlife or a state of consciousness after ours will be. Many people who come out of their body, allegedly, of course, describe a world that they equate to kind of the world we go to after death, where everything is very similar in terms of it would appear material. However, the mind is much more able to directly affect it. So as you were saying earlier, if you imagine a flower, you can create a flower in a material kind of environment. Does that sound kind of like what we would expect to experience after death?
And anything, absolutely, because consciousness has there's a lesser amount of resistance and higher dimensions or existences, or how do we say that, realities, right? So absolutely, it's like if I want to be with Grandpa right now, and I want Grandpa to be 20 years old, and we want to be at some beautiful historical, we want to go watch Babe Ruth play baseball in the 20s, and I'm with Grandpa, and he's 20 and I'm 20. Boom, shum shum shum, we're there. It's like we could be anything, and it's more vibrant. It can be more vibrant, but yet through any reality, it could be anything. It could never rain in heaven. It could always rain in hell. It could be anything. It could be, we are everything. But the truth of it is, when we look at it as it's like this forever, well, how boring, ridiculous. Why? What's the purpose in that? Everything serves a purpose, but once the consciousness says, I've experienced this enough, listen, here's a great question to ask. If we think it's a one and done, why do we always say rest in peace? Why don't we say stay in peace? Maybe because it is a resting place, and we come back to, we regroup. We say, okay, let's go work on this. Let's try to experience this next time. Let's do that. Why? I mean, it's like right in front of us. Even in Catholicism or religion, it's right in front of us. We always say rest in peace. Why don't we say stay if it's a one and done? Ask good questions, right? Blows the mind.
It does. So in your example of taking going with Grandpa at 20 years old to see the baseball match, we don't have baseball over here, but relative.
Yeah.
I suppose the question would be, when people talk about things like thought forms, would that actually be Grandpa, or would it be kind of a figment of your imagination, but in a more real way?
it so excuse me. It could be either way again. I think, and what Spirit's telling me again right now is the egg and the eggshell and the yolk. It can be a very meaningful experience. It could, my grandpa at 20 could be having that experience with me right here, right now, as me and grandpa is in heaven, or what we call heaven, an experience, and he's with me and I'm 80 and he's 80. That could very much be happening right now, where we're playing cribbage or something, or watching a soccer game, or a football game rather, on the pitch, and we're just like or whatever that looks like. And but it's the eggshell and the yolk. It's beautiful, and yet some may feel sadness when we speak of these things, because they're like, no, but I really want to see grandpa. Your reality will never be different than you. It will be very real to you. You will be with, if you are 80 years old and you lost your wife 4 years ago, she transitioned, and you want to see her again, and you want to live with her for for eternity in your mind, as 22-year-olds, wherever, then yeah, you will, you already are right now. And yet at the same time, it's like we get bored as souls, and we say, that was great, let's go, let's do it again. This time you be a mountain lion and I'll be an elk. you know let, let's meet in the woods and be an elk and a mountain lion that get along. Let's try
Yeah.
that, like for real, like
I think with the kind of the idea that I was getting to, I think people would be worried that if they want to see, as you say, they want to see their mothers again or their grandparents again, they want to spend time with them.
yeah.
I think the concern would be, again, well, what if mum or grandpa or whatever are out on their own adventure or their own journey doing something else in themselves, and the person I'm actually spending my time with after I've gone isn't actually them, but it's just kind of a representation of them. That would then take away the value of that experience.
So what I would say to that, and it's a great question to ask, is why do we wait so long to spend time with our passed on loved ones? Why do we wait and think that we have to die before we get to heaven? Why do we do that? We have an innate ability to experience these very real feeling, sensing, knowing, visceral feelings here and now in our life. And if you could start to meditate, if you could start to open up, you could start to feel, you will quickly realize that I don't care what somebody else says, labels that as real or not real. For me, it was beautiful. For me, I felt love. For me, I was there again. For me, that was as real as anything I've ever experienced as a perception in my life. For me, that made me feel safe. For me, that made me feel love, happiness. I felt the air in the room. I remember being with Grandpa. We were there. I could picture the fall woods and the feel and the crispness in the air and the laughter and the vibration. Everything about it was here and now, is here and now. And Grandpa's not dead. Grandpa's not. And he's here and I'm feeling him and we're still communicating. He's giving me advice about work. We're having conversations. We're remembering the fishing trips when we were kids. I can still communicate with my past son. Why? We don't have to wait till heaven. It's here. It always has been. And they're all here.
I suppose when most people would consider that kind of, that they would think of it as kind of a memory, but at the same time that wouldn't have the same impact as knowing that you're interacting with the person themselves at the present time in the physical, as a separate entity outside of your own imagination. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So if we think we're so intelligent, that our own intelligence, if you're literally challenged, or we like to say challenged, not struggling, but if you're literally challenged right now and you're like, oh my gosh, should I leave this place I work, or should I, and you don't know, or you have any perplexing question where you experience doubt and you really don't, if you're so intelligent, you can't figure it out yourself, but yet you did meditate, you asked for Grandpa's higher self, Grandpa to come be here who passed on. Grandpa, I need you, help me to what should I do? And you have a communication with your grandfather who transitioned, and it actually brings you clear vision and you feel great about your decision. and you live that life cycle out and you take those actions and you do realize that that was beautiful and wonderful, what whatever anybody else thought about that would not concern the individual. They would say, yeah, grandpa told me to do this. That was beautiful. I love it. I believe it. I know it. Listen, here's what happened in my life. It was beautiful. And yet in the mind, you're saying at that time when I asked for grandpa to come help me, and grandpa, I need your info, I need you to help me. You weren't able to figure it out then. You still had doubt. So there's something beyond you. And why wouldn't we say that's grandpa? His soul, his aspect. And if he's connected to God, what difference does it make? It's so beautiful. Like so many people, we want to discount things because we don't want to believe in it. And we really deny ourselves the magic of that. Some of it's fear, some of it's just logic. But why do that to ourselves? Why not? It's so beautiful to know that everything is here and now. Everything. And it's only perception that it's gone. But it's eternally within us. My grandfather, my ancestors, God, angels, trees, rocks, elements, creation. Beautiful.